It's loading. I'll let you know when we're close.
Nice meeting you all. I'm taking off. I mean, I'm here, but.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. This is Sarah Griffey from Tosa Together, and welcome to tonight's Tosa Talks, Building a Diverse, Thriving Community. It's an ongoing Facebook Live series that is proudly sponsored by our generous friends at Bostic. So tonight, our Tosa Talk features a special panel discussion with the owners of 3 female-owned businesses in the health and wellness industry. We have with us, and please wave when I say your name, Dina Hazlitt, the owner of Grounded Soul Yoga, Joanna Brooks, owner of Embody Yoga Milwaukee, and Brittany Holterman, owner of Legacy Gym. Welcome, everyone. Please feel free to add to our guests. Please feel free to add your comments and questions in the Facebook comment boxes, and we will try to respond to those remarks as soon as we can. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's host, Deanna Lytle.
Thanks, Sarah. Hello, everyone. We are so glad to be here with you all tonight for a discussion with Dina Hazlitt of Grounded Soul Yoga, Joanna Brooks of Embody Yoga MKE, and Brittany Holterman of Legacy Gym. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here with me tonight. I'm excited to talk to you guys. So first, we'll just start off really quickly with some general background. We want to know more about who you are. So we'll start with Brittany. Just tell us about where you're located, where you're from, and how we can get in touch with you.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm going to stay on mute here and there because I have 2 dogs, 2 babies. I'm sure a lot of you know how that goes. But again, my name is Britt. We're located in the village of Wauwatosa. We have been open for about 6 years, and we're just a strength and conditioning gym. We do mostly class-based stuff, about 45 minutes each. We also do personal training, and we do lots of kids stuff, especially over the summer. So I'm a little burnt today from being outside. I was with Wilson Elementary all morning today, doing some Ninja Warrior stuff. I'm also on the Ninja Warrior show, so tune in. Shameless plug. But thank you again for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Brittany. And Dina.
Hi, my name is Dina Hazlitt. I am owner of Grounded Soul Yoga. I'm born and raised here in Milwaukee. As far as yoga classes go, I offer small group classes, small size yoga classes. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. And Joanna.
Hello, my name is Joanna Brooks. I'm the owner of Embody Yoga, a yoga business based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I was born and raised. I started Embody Yoga about, in July, it'll be 6 years. And I started it with the intention and the mission to share the practice of yoga with people of color. So we are very intentional and unapologetic about making sure that we service and really cater our services to primarily Black women.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you all here tonight. Our topic for our discussion today is building a diverse, thriving community and focusing on breaking barriers in the wellness and fitness world. So we'll get into a little bit of that, but that's why we wanted to talk with you 3 as 3 women and talk a little bit about how you are creating those pathways for the communities that you identify with into the world of fitness and wellness. So I'll start with you, Joanna, first. What was your first introduction to yoga and how did you develop a passion for it?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting story, or unique at least, because I actually started practicing yoga when I was in middle school. And not that I was like so enlightened, you know, as a 6th grader or anything like that, but it was just because I went to a school that started like much later than my siblings. And so they would get up, and I'm a light sleeper. They would wake me up. So I would just go in the living room, turn on the TV, and, you know, just flipping through channels, I came across channel 10, where there would be 2 15-minute yoga programs that would come on back to back. And so I would sit down for those 30 minutes and just like stretch and do yoga with this lady on TV. And I did that consistently, at least through my 6th grade year. So that's kind of where I started with yoga. Obviously, at that age, I didn't have like a deep understanding of the practice and what it could actually do for you, aside from just helping you feel really good and flexible and things like that. So I actually didn't come back to the practice until a few years after I graduated from grad school. I was kind of stuck in that cycle, you know, of, you know, just working and going home. And I wanted to mix it up a little bit and get a little bit more activity back in. And so then I started practicing again, this time doing hot yoga at Bikram Yoga when it was Bikram Yoga on the east side.
Nice, nice. Kind of a happy accident, right? When you're younger. Well,
Yeah.
introduction to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was unique. And I think it's interesting that now I've come in some ways like full circle and come back to the practice, obviously for different reasons. But yeah, that's where it started in 6th grade for me.
Awesome, awesome. And what about you, Dina?
I actually have a background in fitness, and I worked at YMCA long time ago, 20 years ago. And so I was teaching a step aerobics class, and I wanted to introduce more stretching at the end of my class. And so I went to Barnes and Noble and bought a book on yoga. And I started just incorporating just a little bit of yoga. And like Joanna, I really wasn't doing it because I was enlightened. I really didn't know that much about it. And it wasn't until after I graduated nursing school and had my son that I needed to ease my way back into some type of physical activity. And that's my son in the background. So I needed to ease my way into physical activity, and I needed a stress reliever. I was working in the ER, which was very high stress level. And so we just had so many things going on during that time. I just needed a stress reliever. And so that is what that's how yoga kind of became my practice.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. And Brittany, what was your first introduction into the fitness world? And specifically American Ninja Warrior, because that is the coolest.
Yeah, thanks. So I grew up always playing team sports, basketball, soccer, volleyball. And then I went to college and I played a sport in college as well. And then afterwards I graduated, got a real job. I was an engineer for a while, and I moved back to Milwaukee. And I just felt like I was missing something. So I would, go to the gym to work out, but I would like sit on the elliptical, or I didn't really know how to work out by myself. And I didn't feel like there were many good options for somewhere for me to work out, doing the things that I wanted to do. I didn't want to sit on a piece of cardio equipment. And, going into like the free weight area, there's just a lot of men over there. They're, I'm into strength training, but I didn't want to be surrounded by all of these guys. Don't get me wrong, I love guys. I'm married to a woman, so let's get that out of the way. But I have a lot of guy friends, and that's great. But I think I wanted to start something that was more team-based. And so that's when Legacy, kind of this idea, started coming together. And I know there's a ton of class options out there, but I wanted it to be more community-based, accountability, more into strength stuff, and not just like a boot camp. So that's kind of where Legacy started. And then American Ninja Warrior. So my wife so the gym world, as you all know, is mostly like morning and night, right? Like people go to work during the day. So we're gone a lot of nights. So I come home one night and my wife, Jamie, is sitting on the couch watching American Ninja Warrior. And really, she just said, Britt, I think you could do this. You should start training for it. And I'm like, okay, like that's cool. Like, let's try it. As you know, a 30-year-old trying a new sport that has nothing to do with any of my team sports. Like this is an individual sport hanging in the air, whereas all of my other sports were like feet on the ground. So it just kind of like gave me a whole new perspective on training and competing, and, you know, gave me a little bit of new life. So now I kind of incorporate that stuff into my classes at Legacy. Like, you know, can you hang on a bar? Like most people can't. I don't think I could before this whole process started, right? But it's like so cool for like elongating, you know, in the yoga world, like let's lengthen those muscles as opposed to just like pounding and sitting and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So sorry, I'm rambling, but that's kind of like in a nutshell how Legacy started.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. So, and I mean, I'm glad, like, obviously we have so many different representations of the world that we have here tonight. And, you know, when we talk about breaking barriers, you know, when you think about the fitness world and the yoga world, you know, you don't see a lot of representation of women, of people of color, of those in the LGBTQ community. So it's so awesome to just kind of hear how you guys got your first introductions into the industry, because I think it's, you know, people can relate to that, to all of that, you know, everyone can relate to that. So that's awesome. So I want to talk now about your businesses and like, how did you actually start the business? When did you say, okay, I'm going to like do this? I'll start with you, Brittany.
So I was an engineer for, you know, 6 or 7 years right out of college. And you want to talk about being a minority in a field. I mean, a woman in engineering at my age, I think now it's starting to, women are really, or girls, right, with all the STEM programs are really starting to be introduced to math and science, and like, it's okay to do that. But for me, I was the only woman in my office. And it was like a fairly small office, but I just wasn't happy there. I mean, not only was I a woman, I was a gay woman, and I just felt like I couldn't be open. So like nobody knew that I was gay, you know, and they'd always be like, oh, you want to bring your boyfriend to this, you know, dinner and, you know, whatever. It just wasn't even like a question. Just, I was straight. Okay, this is who I have to pretend to be. I have to put on these clothes and be this person in this office. And then one day I kind of just like got fed up. I was dating Jamie for about a year at that point, and she could tell that living these two lifestyles was kind of taking a toll on me. You know, at home with her, I was one person, and then I'd have to go to the office and kind of pretend to be somebody else. And, you know, it was affecting our relationship. So one day I pretty much just called Jamie and I said, hey, can you write my letter of resignation? So she did. And I met with the owners, and I gave it to them and pretty much just told them everything. And in their defense, like, they were completely blindsided. They had no idea. Like, I mean, now, I should have been open with them. I mean, it wasn't their fault that they didn't know. It was me not being okay with it. So right now, like now I'm like trying to be super out about everything so that everybody can just be honest and be themselves. Like, I'm so into that. But anyway, so quit engineering, and then figured out what I wanted to do, really. Like this whole, you know, I didn't have a gym to work out at. I didn't, and that was always like a stress reliever for me, as I'm sure it is for you all too. So then, you know, I took about 3 months and came up with the Legacy plan. I found a lease or a space available, rented the space out for 3 years, like signed a 3-year lease, and just kind of built it as we went. I mean, I got some advice saying, open your doors like as soon as you can, and then just kind of like meet people and see what works and what doesn't work. So I had a business plan, but I mean, it's completely changed throughout the last 6 years. And it's just kind of like been what people want, and this ever evolving And then COVID happens, and then you're like, well, now what? But it's been super fun. You know, the business has survived COVID. So knock on wood, if it can survive COVID, I don't know. I mean, I think we're looking pretty good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Gina, what about you? I love your background because it's so multifaceted. You started your business while you were still in a whole other career, right?
And I'm still in that career. I still work as a nurse. But you know, I just to go back a little bit, I initially, when I worked at the Y, I wanted to be in charge of my own programming, and not really have to get permission, so to speak, for the types of classes that I wanted to create. And so, this was maybe 2007 or so, I left the Y and I started a studio back then. And the same year that I started my studio, my parents got sick. So they both were diagnosed with cancer in the same year. And I had to make a hard choice if I was going to pursue my dream or help my parents. Well, I chose to help my parents, so I closed at that time. So when I graduated from nursing school, then that's when I decided, hey, this is time. You know, it's time for me to move forward with this. And you know, one of the reasons that I chose to when I worked at the Y, I worked at the Y in the inner city. And I was very intentional about that because there were so many health disparities within my family. And I felt like exercise was one of the ways that you could do something about those health disparities. And so that's kind of how things kind of got rolling for me. And when I finished teacher training in 2017, I believe, I didn't want to work for anybody. I wanted to be in control of my programming. And so I looked on Craigslist and I found a studio for rent in Tosa. And that's kind of how I ended up being in Tosa, because the location worked and the lease price worked as well.
Important factors, very important factor as a business owner, right? Yeah.
Well, yes, because it can affect, if I can keep my overhead low, then I can pass that off onto my clients and the people that are actually coming in.
Right. Good point. And Joanna, what about you? How did you start your business? When did you make the decision to sign the paperwork?
I didn't. You know, I don't think initially I meant to have a business. You know, in a lot of ways, Embody Yoga at the start was a healing project for me. Until I had been through this really terrible and embarrassing breakup. And I just needed something to do to get myself started again and to help me heal and to, in some ways, distract me, you know. And so I gave myself this task to create or lead an independent yoga class under this name, Embody Yoga, that just came to me one day. And my plan was just to offer the class for 6 weeks, once a week for 6 weeks. So I found another Black yoga studio owner, and I rented space from her relatively cheaply so that I could, you know, lead this class. And I figured the process of getting everything started, doing the advertising on social media and things like that, creating flyers, that would keep me busy. And it did work, you know, in terms of healing for sure. And then it just kept going, you know, people kept showing up, and you know, it was low stakes for me. I'm like, as long as people keep showing up, you know, I'll keep showing up. And that's kind of been, you know, I'm a little bit more intentional now about like my business strategy, but really that's the base of it. As long as I still have students showing up, I'll keep showing up too.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm hearing from the three of you some a familiar theme is that you can start a business as a way to kind of be your authentic self, but at the same time you're creating space for others to be themselves too, and have that space for them to you know, work out, do what they need to do, but be in an inclusive space, because that space is filled with you being you, you know.
Mhm.
And that's awesome. I think that's like so beautiful. I really love, you know, business. You can make a business out of doing the things that you love and also share it with the community. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I know it's great. It's not always easy though, right? So tell me a little bit about like who helped you along the way and what were some of the obstacles you faced? Brittany, we'll start with, or Joanna, go ahead. You're about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mentioned previously the Black yoga studio owner that I rented space from, and that's Therese of Zenzen Yoga Art. So I just want to shout her out really quickly. She's obviously still in business and doing some amazing things. And I would say she helped me out quite a bit too. You know, of course, she provided and created space in her own studio for me to start my business. But I also remember her telling me a couple of things. She gave me a couple of business tips, but the first one was that I needed to get a website. Like I needed to make a website. You know, even if it wasn't the best website, people, they just tend to take you more seriously when they can find you on the internet. And so she kind of hit that home for me. And I think it was something about that conversation that made me decide to start taking my business a little bit more seriously. Like I've always had the pride, right? I want to represent myself and my family well. But in terms of thinking about my business as a real business and, you know, laying the foundation and doing the things that I need to do that would lead me to be successful, she was really helpful for me in that regard. And then beyond that, I would say my community, my students, they've been so incredibly important to the success of Embody Yoga, and for obvious reasons, right? Because they come, they take class, and we can continue to keep the doors open. But even for those students or those folks who don't practice yoga and don't intend to ever come to a class, they still share about Embody Yoga and speak well of us in the community. And that gives us a lot of referrals that allows us to go out into schools, youth servant organizations, companies, and things like that to offer our services also.
Awesome, awesome. And Brittany, what about you? Who helped you along the way and held your hand when you needed help?
So 100% my wife. I mean, Jamie was there the whole time. I mean, she was there when I decided to quit my job. She was there for the 3 months, you know, that I was not working. We actually got a puppy in that time. So she was actually kind of happy that I wasn't working so I could take the dog out all the time. But I remember, you know, you put in all this time planning everything, and then the doors open. And I remember our first week was free to anybody who wanted to come. We put it out there on MindBody just to, you know, get people talking about us. So I was like, okay, so like people show up because it's free. So the first week we did have people there. And I remember the Sunday before the second week. So like the day before, you had to pay to come to us. I had a conversation with Jamie and I just said, this week's going to be really hard for me. I don't think anybody's going to show up. Like nobody's going to show up and I'm going to be devastated. And I understand that it's a process. And she was just like the rock who was there for me and was like, you know what, if nobody shows up, nobody shows up. We'll make it work one way or another. You know, I'm here for you, whatever you need. And people did show up. I mean, the first, you know, while there were just a handful of members, but then it gained some traction and people started talking and it grew from there. And so Jamie's 100% my biggest supporter. She made this, without her, legacy wouldn't be anything. I would probably be grumpy old engineer. And I'd say the biggest obstacle was at the beginning being my authentic self, because, you know, Tosa has a history, right? I mean, there's a history to Tosa where gay people aren't okay there, you know, we're not accepted, and there's churches everywhere. And that always makes me a little skeptical as to, can I tell people, can I come out to people? And will people keep coming to my gym because I need them to come to my gym? So my biggest obstacle is myself. I mean, it was just, when do I tell people that I'm married to a woman? You know, when do I tell people that I'm gay and that, you know, who I actually am? And I found out pretty quick that nobody cares. Everybody is, I mean, I won't say everybody, but for the most part, whenever there's a new person who comes in, I somehow try to sneak in my wife, Jamie, into the first couple of sentences, because if you don't want to be there because of that fact, you should leave now. You shouldn't stick around. I don't want your money. And for the most part, I have not had any issue in Tosa. And I mean, it's pretty awesome to be able to be yourself and be accepted.
Yeah, that's awesome. And amen to spouses named Jamie, because that's also my spouse's name. Very supportive
Yes.
spouses.
Awesome.
Awesome. And Dina, what about you? What were some obstacles that you faced, and who kind of helped you along the way?
I would say my husband, he's been my biggest supporter. He's always there to encourage me and always there to he wants me to be my best self. And, you know, he's just really, it's so important as a small business owner to just have that supportive person with what it is you're trying to do. And he's been that 100% and then some. I would say my biggest obstacle is probably myself, because I'm more of a, you know, I like to kind of be behind the scenes a little bit. And so it really pushes me out of my comfort zone to promote myself. So that's an obstacle for me that I'm working to overcome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. You know, you can be a business owner, but everybody isn't, you know, the super extroverted, out in front person. And so I think a lot of people can relate to that and see you as an example of, like, you know, hey, you can do this, you know, you can do it. And I think it's, you know, I've taken one of your yoga classes, Dina, and you're like the most soothing person ever. And so
Thank you.
I think it's awesome. I love how you are. So it's awesome.
Thank you.
Just to talk a little bit more about, like, the barriers, you know, a lot has gone on for a while, but in the last year, right? I mean, we've been in a pandemic. Being business owners in a pandemic is like a thing all its own. But then on top of that, there's all of these, you know, there's been a lot of action and a lot of things going on, you know, just on the social justice front in Milwaukee, here in Wauwatosa. So just like reflecting on the state of recent events, how do you process that through yoga or through movement? How do you, you know, deal with everything with your practice? Dina, I'll start with you.
I have a few things that I do in my bag, you know. Writing is like therapeutic for me. And I often incorporate writing with my yoga practice. It is essential for me to process things that way. That way I can just get it out of my head and we're done, you know? And, you know, one of the things that, and this was kind of coincidence. I took a trauma-informed yoga certification right before COVID happened. And just being trauma informed has been very useful just to know that on a personal level that, you know, I'm not out there dealing with traumatic things by myself, especially as it relates to race, racism, just a lot of other social justice issues. And I just, yeah, so that's one of the things that I use. I use my journal writing. As far as my other self-care goes, I use yoga. I make sure that I schedule my me time. It's pretty much a non-negotiable for me that I have to have my me time included every day. So I wake up early in the morning before my family starts to stir and make sure that, you know, getting my prayer time, meditation time in. One of the things that I really want to bring is more trauma-informed classes to Grounded Soul Yoga.
Yeah, that's so needed. It's so needed. And I think it's awesome that you are thinking of that and thinking of that to offer, you know. Joanna, I've also taken one of your classes. I love the Beyonce class. I've talked a lot about, you know, joy, being joyful is a form of resistance as well in this time period. And so I'm thankful for you for providing space where people can find joy in classes like that. But what are some ways that you specifically kind of process everything through your practice?
Yeah, so like my yoga practice, the physical practice, you know, a yoga philosophy says that, you know, there will always be states of change, right? Things will always be changing. And even your response to those things will change from day to day, right? And we can see that in our physical practice too. Every day your body may respond to the practice differently. Every day your body is different and feels differently. And so I think just receiving that message through my physical practice and being able to translate that into daily life and things that are happening, you know, on any given day. So in terms of, you know, what was happening last summer, right? And experiencing that as a person of color, a black woman, you know, in the city, or even thinking about the impact of COVID-19 on my business as a small business owner, right? There's like all of these opportunities to become really overwhelmed or discouraged or feel like you want to give up. But I think the steadying force for me was, you know, just coming back to my practice and remembering that, you know, all of these things change, right? And how I respond to them or how I feel about them will change too. And then, you know, I have a friend who gave me some business advice when I set out. And he said, you know, there will be highs and lows in business, right? And your goal is to stay steady right in the middle. So don't get too caught up on the highs. That way you won't get too down on the lows and you can just, you know, be pretty level. And I mean, that's yoga too, you know, so I just try to ride the wave and breathe, you know, and accept things as they come.
Breathing, so important. Important. It's like the most important thing we do without consciously doing it every day. You know, that's awesome. Brittany, what about you? How are you getting through? I can say for me, I have been lifting weights a lot, and I did not realize until about 6 months ago how much of a stress reliever that is. So what do you do?
Yeah, totally. And Joanna, to your point about that business advice, I mean, that's like just great advice from day to day, right? Like, don't believe everything that people tell you that you're amazing, because, you know, it's not all true. They don't know. And then don't believe everything that people say that you're all negative. I mean, you know, not saying that we should like be in the middle or whatever, but like just take everything with a grain of salt. Like, I think that's awesome advice. Like, thank you for sharing that. Yes, lifting weights is great. I mean, I have really gotten into lifting a lot. I think Jamie will tell you that the days that I work out, I'm much happier than the days that I don't work out. And she's over here. She just said, that's very true. So she's awesome and, you know, allows me that time to, you know, go to the gym and work out. But But I think as far as like processing what has happened over the last year and a half, and I know, Sienna, that you haven't been to one of my classes, but hopefully soon you'll get into one.
I'm
But
there. I'm already there.
yeah, so I am not like the drill sergeant kind of trainer. People actually kind of make fun of me because I like really enjoy chatting with people. So, and if you don't want to chat during your workout, I will stay away from you. But for me, talking to a lot of different people about their perspectives on things has really helped me, I don't know, get through this past year and a half, because there has been so much that has happened. And I think legacy brings people from a lot of different political backgrounds, a lot of different, genders are coming together, sexual orientation, and just, hearing a lot of different people's perspectives on that in candid conversations. I think that, people trust me because I trust them. I give them my perspectives and my information, and not to say that everybody agrees with me, and I don't certainly agree with everybody else, but at least there's that mutual respect that everybody has when walking into the gym. We're all going to work out together. We might not all be best friends, but at least we respect each other enough to listen to different perspectives, which I think is my favorite part of legacy. And then also, I love to read. I have 2 dogs and 2 babies and a wife and everything else, so I don't have a ton of time to read. But over the last year and a half, I've really made it a point to read and educate myself as much as possible. So I've really made that a priority too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I just want to remind everybody who's watching to make sure you submit your questions and comments into the chat. We're going to be getting to the audience questions here in a minute. But I wanted to ask, just to kind of piggyback on, all of the stuff that's going on, how do you use your platform to highlight social justice or inclusion in the last year? Like, are you intentionally spotlighting it or creating space for it in your platform, or are you using, your audience to communicate to them? How do you do that in your business? Brittany, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And like I said, I've talked to a ton of different people, like, how can I help? Like, I am a white woman. I, don't walk in the footsteps of anybody other than a gay white woman, which, I can hide the fact that I'm gay if I really need to. So I respect the fact that, if I needed to do that, I could do that. People of different races can't do that. It's just, that is what it is. So what can I do to help? What have we done? We have been intentional about who we hire, because I think having people who look like you is important, as far as trainers and painters, and we have a special needs person who cleans our gym. So just really kind of diversifying who we hire and where that money goes, and trying to keep it local. We've also reached out for scholarships to come to our gym, and really put into, you need to earn this, right? Like, you need to come every day and you need to work. So scholarships too. Our social media, we try to do everything we can. And like I said, reading a ton of books, trying to educate myself, but doing whatever I can, and always open to suggestions. And that's a big thing too, like getting rid of any sort of defensiveness and taking suggestions.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I think it's awesome that, everyone can educate themselves to a certain degree, right? For me personally, I've been reading a lot. It is Pride Month. And I've been reading a lot about, I have a 13-year-old who asked me about pronouns. Like, why do we need to say different pronouns? And I had to educate myself on a lot of things that I didn't know, and it's important to have that open mind so that you can use your voice. And, at the end of the day, whether you realize it or not, you are making your space more inclusive just by being knowledgeable, right? because that will come off, and people will enter your space knowing that this is a place where people are thinking about me, and I feel included here. So that's awesome. Dina, what are you doing to highlight inclusion and social justice? I know you talked about the trauma response, which to me, I think is so important, when you think about mental health and making sure, there's conversations and an openness around that.
One of the things that I'm doing, speaking from a trauma-informed perspective, is I have cards at my front desk. And those cards, in yoga, sometimes we do hands-on adjustments, which is, fine if you do hands-on adjustments. But I'm offering these cards where it gives the participant an opportunity to receive hands-on adjustments or not. Because putting your hands on someone can be very triggering. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that I'm actually doing at the studio. I'm also using my social media platform to highlight social justice topics. And I'm just also educating myself and dismantling whatever is inside of me. So hopefully by me dismantling my biases, that I can project that out into the world, and encouraging people who may come to me or people who may message me, do your work. And if you do your work, you can change, the narrative on how you're presenting yourself. And that kind of has a ripple effect within our families and within our communities.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And what about you, Joanna? I know you talked earlier about, it was important for you to be intentional of creating a space like specifically for people of color. And that's amazing. That in itself is, for us, by us. And that's a beautiful concept in the world of yoga. But how are you using your platform?
Yeah, so, we're 100% Black owned, Black operated at Embody Yoga. And so I think, when I think of myself and I think in terms of business, like I am my client, right? I'm my ideal client. And so then whatever feels relevant for me, whatever creates a response or a reaction in me, for the most part, I feel pretty confident that then it also is eliciting a response in my students and our clients too, right? And so, like Brittany, we are very much about community at Embody Yoga. And so then we have those conversations, right? Whether in person or via social media, I feel very free to talk about things that are impacting me or impacting my community, impacting Black people specifically. And so last summer, when George Floyd was murdered, I didn't intend to, but when I look back, we had this whole series of classes to address that. There was yoga for the rage, because as Black people, we felt so much rage and anger, and then that was immediately followed by yoga for the weary, because as Black people, we are so tired, of being in this place and like hearing this news. And then that was followed by yoga for the resolution. So what is the consensus? What is the next step? What actions are we going to take now as a community, as individuals? And that was something that was just natural for us to do as a Black owned and operated yoga studio, right? Because it was important to me as an individual, and then that just translated into the work, that we do. In terms of like my platform and social media, in addition to speaking to our students, I also try to speak to the Milwaukee yoga community. And so it wasn't hard for me to call folks out, after George Floyd was murdered. I actually made a post. It was like a meme that, I took and I edited it to say, hey, white yoga studio owners, I noticed your silence on this issue. I know you haven't said anything, and this is important. and people are hurting. And this is a great opportunity, since we want to talk about diversity in yoga so much, this is a great opportunity to address that and address racism and lack of diversity in yoga in Milwaukee and, around the country, really. And so, I got a little bit of pushback, but for the most part, there was, I think a lot of support. And then out of all of this, we were able to create a nonprofit, Embody Yoga for All, just to really expand the reach and the mission of Embody Yoga and make it a reality, making sure that everybody has access to at least one yoga class a week, whether they have the money to afford it or not. Creating a Aspiring Black Yoga Teachers Education Fund so that we can really make the field of yoga in Milwaukee diverse, providing partial and full scholarships for Black women and men, femmes, whoever, who want to become certified yoga instructors. And that's led to some other opportunities too. We recently launched a swim program that primarily benefits Black kids, Black women, Black men, so that they can learn how to swim, a basic life skill. So again, just taking everything about like our culture, who we are, having those conversations, and then finding ways to bring wellness to the community, I think is really at the heart of what we do. And that's, you kind of referenced this before, but that's activism.
It is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And I think, there's so much about yoga and fitness and strength training that you can tie to everyday life to help you in whatever world you're in. And I think when you are a part of a people group that is a marginalized community in our society, there are so many connections to wellness and fitness that help you live in the world that you live in, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you talked about the philosophy, of yoga. I think about, when I'm strength training and I'm lifting weights and I'm like literally getting that pump and I see like how strong I feel, it just reminds me of, the resilience of my community, so there's so many connections. And I think that it's so important to have the three of you in this space doing what you're doing to help people in your communities make those connections. And so I applaud, I bow to each of you. Thank you so much. So we're going to go to a couple of questions from our audience. One person wrote, "It is so refreshing to hear three unique but overlapping stories of women coming into their health businesses. Thank you for being here. My question is, how do you keep learning more and growing in the ways you want to? And how do you carve out intentional time to grow rather than stay in your day-to-day routine?" Brittany, I'll start with you.
That's hard. That last part of the question is hard because y'all know, especially if you're Dina, are you still a nurse too?
I'm still a nurse too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, right, like you want to put everything into your small business because it's your baby, it's your passion. You want to do as much as you can to make it thrive. And I fall into the trap all the time of, oh yeah, I have a free half an hour. Let's book it with a client. I have, because you want to keep going, and finding time every day to like reflect on the things that you're learning and the places you want to go and your goals. It's so important. I mean, it's so important for the long term of your business. But I definitely have trouble. Like sometimes I'm in the shower, I'm like, well, at least I got 10 minutes to, reflect on things. So that's something I need to work on. But the way that I continue to grow is just, like I said, talking to everybody. I mean, I think some people are like, why are you so intrusive? Stop asking all these questions. And, obviously like you don't have to answer your questions if you don't want to, but I'm just very interested in where people are coming from and their histories and why they think the way that they do. So I think I've learned more in the last 5 years, 6 years of legacy than I have like all growing up, because there's just so many different perspectives that I can hear from every single day.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I'm going to go to one more question. Actually, we have a couple more. So I'll ask Dina one and I'll ask Joanna one. Dina, what is one way you think our Wauwatosa and Milwaukee area community could be healthier? Do you have any ideas on how we could go about creating that change?
One way we can be healthier. Wow. I think that Milwaukee does a pretty good job because we have like yoga in the garden, we have yoga in the parks, and so I think that we could do better by being more inclusive as far as price goes. Just making sure that people, that things are accessible for people, making sure that that classes are affordable for people. I think that's one way that we can, and maybe we can get something going where Milwaukee and Tosa have some type of collaboration together. Maybe some studios in Milwaukee and studios in Tosa. Maybe we could, do a collaboration together where we're having some type of fun fitness day or something like that. Just so that people can have the opportunity to mingle and talk and have fun and get fit together. What was the last part of the question?
Well, yeah, it was how, do you have any ideas on how we could go about creating that change? And that I think you answered it, and I'm totally here for it. So when y'all get together and put that together, let us know so we can come. That's awesome. And Joanna, last question for you. What are the most important personal philosophies and teachings of yoga to you?
So before we got on,
I love
this is my absolute, I actually like yoga philosophy. Like I'm continually learning. I won't, claim to be an expert. I think I've always been interested in philosophy in general. But yoga philosophy really speaks to me. So one of my all-time favorite books is The Heart of Yoga. I highly recommend this because the way this author speaks about yoga philosophy is so, like everyday run-of-the-mill conversation about like life. And he introduces these yogic principles, right, and philosophies in a way that's so easy to digest and understand. This was a book that was required for teacher training when I went through it, but I find myself like revisiting this over and over. But specifically as it relates to yoga philosophy, I think one of the most important things that we're required to do as yogis is come to know ourselves and engage in self-reflection. And that's one of the main purposes and benefits of the practice of yoga. And so although I wasn't asked the question, like, how do you continue to grow? This kind of answers that question too, self-reflection, always observing the self, right, on your mat and off of the mat, and using whatever you learn, whatever information you gather to understand areas where you need to make change so that you can ascend to the next level or become a higher self or your highest self. And so that's a yoga philosophy that's really personally appealing for me, and one of the ways that I, attempt to move in the world and also to grow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And I'm going to Google that book as soon as we're done.
Yeah, The Heart of Yoga.
The Heart of Yoga.
Beskachar. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, we've got a couple minutes left, and before we wrap up, I have one more question. And this is hard. It's a hard question. In one sentence, what are you trying to achieve with the work that you do? in one sentence. Joanna, I'll start with you.
Yes, I want to change the city of Milwaukee through the practice of yoga, one practice, one pose, one breath at a time. I know that sounds rehearsed, some of it is, but
It's
really
awesome.
that really is, that's the mission. That's what I hope to do.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dina, what about you?
I would say I want to heal myself and facilitate healing in others.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Brittany, in one sentence, what are you trying to achieve with the work that you do?
Wow, those two are tough to follow. Good job. I would say my goal is to bring people together who normally wouldn't be together and bring humanity to the other.
I love that. I love that. Well, I am so, like, my heart is so full right now, just being in your Zoomed presence. Thank you so much for talking with me today. This has been amazing, amazing, amazing. I just want to let everybody know, each of you can be found on social media. So Brittany is at Legacy Gym in Wauwatosa. Dina is at Grounded Soul Yoga, and Joanna is at Embody Yoga NKE. So everybody watching, go look them up, book a class, do whatever you got to do to go experience their yoga and fitness experiences. I am definitely going to book as soon as we get done. So I hope all of our viewers will join me in thanking our guests, Dina Haslett, Joanna Brooks, and Brittany Halterman. Thank you all for taking time to talk with us tonight and for sharing all of your great information, experiences, and insights. Thank you also to you, our Facebook audience, for your time and interest. We will do our best to follow up with any comments or questions you have included in the comment section this evening. And as always, a special thank you to our generous friends at Bostic, whose support makes the entire Tosa Talk series possible. Remember, you can find a recording of tonight's presentation on all Tosa Talks presentations on the Tosa Together YouTube channel. Plan on joining us for a special Tosa Talks webinar and Facebook Live presentation at noon on Wednesday, June 22nd. Tosa Together, Milwaukee Turners, and other local equity-focused groups are thrilled to host national speaker Vincent Sutherland, the director of the Center on Race, Inequality, and the Law at NYU Law, speaking on the background and future of policing practices. Very important. Everybody come. Feel free to reach out to Tosa Together anytime through our Facebook page, our website, or by emailing us directly at tosatogether@gmail.com. This is Sienna Lytle with Tosa Together, spouse to Jamie, another Jamie, and it has been my pleasure to be here with our special panelists as well as with all of you. Thanks for being part of Tosa Talks and our mutual effort to build a diverse, thriving community. Good night, everybody.